captured all of that. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the September board meeting for the Deschutes Public Library District Board. And welcome to those who are attending online. I am going to turn this over to Todd.
Yeah.
Because he is going to explain the consent agenda.
Okay, so, are you all familiar with consent agendas? So basically, a lot of agencies do this where they take something like the minutes, financials, and maybe some standard reports and list them all as the consent agenda, where all you have to do is one motion that says I'll approve the consent agenda. You are always, that doesn't mean that we can't discuss anything. If you have questions on the minutes or questions on the financial piece that Robert sent out, we can address that. But if not, we can just do a simple, I move to approve the consent agenda, and then we can move on with the meeting.
And when you say the financial piece, you mean?
I mean, the
monthly
district disbursements. I didn't want to say it because I can't say disbursements. So.
Understand that. So is this format acceptable to everybody?
I love consent agendas.
Yeah. Well,
I'm always trying to get my stuff on consent agendas.
Yeah, yeah. And does anybody have any questions, any additions or corrections or anything?
And what is on this consent
Oh,
agenda?
that is the August 14th library board minutes, the August 23rd
Oh, I see.
work session in the district disbursements.
Okay.
You go to the bills from last month. If nobody has any questions, I would entertain a motion for approval.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. And it does not look like we have any members of the public
No.
present, so we will dispense with public comments. And next up is fourth quarter financials. So Robert.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, I was not able to join you in person for this one, but I'm happy to be joining you online. So this one is what I like to call our provisional fourth quarter financials. So every quarter we report on the quarterly status. This is our chance to look as we've been in the process of wrapping up our books and preparing things with our third-party CPA to develop our annual financial statement. We do have enough information to be able to provide you this quarterly report on how things kind of finished up in that fourth quarter. The reason I say provisional is because there's just one or two areas that always get a certain amount of adjustment. They typically tend to be balance sheet items, but a few of them do show up on that cash reconciliation report. And so I just wanted to point that out, is that some of the numbers on here may be subject to change in the next week or so as we're doing the final review with our CPA for the annual financials. After that, we'll be developing those financials and then sending them over to the auditor for their review. And then we'll be in active audit for fiscal year 23-24. Right now, with our schedule for this year, we are expecting the auditor to have all of their information back to us and ready to present to you in the December board meeting. That's about a month later than we've typically done it in the past, and that was by design based on our findings from last year and deciding that with the additional complexity during the bond project, that it made sense to add an additional month's worth of work on all parties' part to make sure we really get these numbers right and have enough time to give them sufficient review. Okay, so with all that out of the way, I'm ready to start in on the report itself. As always, we start with that cash reconciliation report. This is our modified cash accrual accounting of all of the main inflows and outflows, as well as, like I say, it's modified accrual. So there are certain short-term outflows or short-term inflows that are included there. A few to highlight for you on this particular report. The first one was that the letter E, that safekeeping accounts of 137 million. That is a combination of the holdings in U.S. Bank for the bond investments and the Pershing account for the general fund investments. And so that one is a bit of a combination. You can't really tease it out for just fund for the bond fund or other. Another one to identify for you is the grants and other district receivables, which shows a 0 right now. At the end of the year, all outstanding receivables have been posted for the year. So that one is showing as a 0 and does make sense based on where we are in the fiscal year. And then the last one to mention out of this report is letter L, which is the accounts payable line. Just doing a bit of comparison from this time last year to this time this year, I did notice a decent amount of increase there, all of which I was able to tie back to the increase in our retainage payable to Kirby Nagelhout and to SunWest Builders for the various building projects. Just to remind you, retainage payable is a portion of the overall cost of the work being performed that gets set aside and held back as a bit of a risk mitigation for us as the district. So it provides that assurance that a builder will complete to satisfaction. We've been very happy with both Kirby and with SunWest Builders, no doubts about their performance, but this is a standard in the industry for building projects, especially for large public works projects like this. So that's the elements out of the cash reconciliation report. I also did a bit of year-over-year comparison for the actual ending fund balances. Reserve fund, grant fund, reserve fund, grant fund, and debt service fund all remained relatively flat if we compare June 30th of 2023 with June 30th of 2024. And that's to be expected. There was movement in and out on each of those funds. General fund actually ended a bit higher at the end of 2024 relative to 2023, but all within kind of explainable understanding in terms of what we knew, what we had budgeted, and where we thought we would end up. Bond capital fund was where we saw the biggest decrease year over year, but that is also, of course, to be expected. This is the fund for spending of our bond related projects. And we saw a difference of something on the order of, oh shoot, I already closed that. Something on the order of about 45 million, 50 million. Actually, don't quote me on that. We'll get to that later when we get to that part of the report when we look at the bond fund. But anyway, we did see a downward movement out of that fund because there are no new inflows in that other than interest earned. But there are significant outflows related to payments for the progress on the projects. So we ended the year with a modified accrual fund balance of $166 million. And then if we move on into the financial highlights, we can see how those cash inflows and cash outflows translate into resources and expenditures on the various funds. So the first area that we look at is our general fund. We did end the year fully resourced, in fact, slightly higher than anticipated. And that includes a couple of things. We've been tracking throughout the year that we started the year with a slightly higher fund balance than we had built into our budget. As far as the expected revenues, tax receipts met our revenues, contracts and MOUs with the law library, with the county for the law library and with Jefferson and Crook County libraries. All met expectations. We had much higher interest revenue than budgeted because of that higher rate of return over this last year or two. And then this resource in the general fund includes a progress payment. I'm sorry, yes, it includes one progress payment from the insurance company to offset roughly $26,000 loss from the materials that were damaged and had to be removed from the pipe burst up in Sisters. Now, if we look at expenditures, expenditures were tracking well. We did end the year under the full budgeted amount. But again, that is by nature. We always build a certain amount of margin for the unexpected in. And this year we did have a couple of unexpected expenditures. So it was good that we had built that in. In personal services, things tracked very well. Benefits and salary came out to about 92% of the budget that was of the budgeted amount, and that tracked fairly well to our personnel staffing levels. And then materials and services, we ran about 75% of what was budgeted, with a couple areas where we ran a bit over where we thought that we would be. And this is when you start to get into those various line items that build up into your budget. Auditing, we were aware from the first quarter, was running higher than we had built into the budget because of the hours that were required to complete last year's audit. We did factor in more into this year's budget, fiscal year 24-25, for this current audit. We will see where we end up at the end of that. We may have hit the mark, or we may need to make some more adjustments based on the hours being delivered for the complexity of everything going on in the district, and also all the additional GASB rules that are coming out that require a lot of additional analysis. Buildings and grounds did end higher than the budgeted amount. However, the entirety of that overrun was due to that unexpected pipe burst and the cost of repairs associated with it. So the costs for demolition, restoration, and reopening the building did come out of buildings and grounds, and we have that additional amount of unanticipated materials and services that we're able to apply appropriately based on where that runs. So overall, we ended materials and services well under the budgeted amount. So we did not need to dip into any of the unanticipated materials and services in order to cover that difference. One other area I wanted to highlight out of the general fund in the materials and services area, you'll notice that books shows a significant underrun. And in fact, it's lower than it looked even in Q3 when you looked at the report. The reason for that is, in consultation with the auditor and also understanding some new guidelines that came out from GASB and from the state, it looks like we need to start classifying all of our physical collections as a capital asset. So all of the books, library of things, the physical things that we lend out, we have been treating as consumables essentially, or as materials in a materials and services fund, because turnover is so high that it didn't necessarily make sense for us to capitalize it. Again, the guidance came out recently. It was very ambiguous up until this point, and they pretty clearly stated from the GASB board that that books for libraries are a capitalized asset. And so we've started treating them as such in fiscal year 23-24 and going forward as well. What that looks like on this report is that materials and services for books are lower than anticipated, and capital outlay is significantly higher than was originally budgeted, because all of that dollar expenditure, it just got reclassified. We didn't spend more or anything. It's just it moved out of the materials and services category and into capital outlay. Now that's significant enough that I just want to pause right there and see if you had any questions about where we ended up on the general fund.
I have a quick question about Sisters, and it's the $26,000. Is that what the library had to pay beyond the insurance, or has the insurance not covered that, and will it?
So that one is one of these elements that is essentially, it's a book loss. So it is an expenditure that we paid last fiscal year for the initial installation at Sisters for the areas in the community room and in the children's area. At that point, we had to estimate the amount of capital assets that we had to write off when the pipe burst. So it is strictly a write-off loss that does end up getting realized on on the current fiscal years, or I guess the previous fiscal year, the fiscal year ending June 2024, it shows up on that financial report as essentially a loss. It would be similar to if we took an asset like one of the district vehicles, and if we sold it today, we would have to document either the gain or the loss of that sale of that asset based on its current depreciated value. So since the things that were in Sisters were brand new, they hadn't depreciated at all yet, we lost the full value of that material. And that's essentially our estimation of what it cost to install the amount of insulation, drywall, carpeting, ceiling tiles that had to get pulled out at demolition. So it was not an additional $26,000 bill. And it's not an additional cost over what I gave to the board as a briefing last month about that overall cost of restoration. It is simply a book line item at this point.
Just to reiterate what Robert was saying about the collection going to capital, we actually had that discussion at the budget meeting, and it's reflected in our this current year budget. That about half of our collection is now capitalized. So we, just a reminder that we had that discussion.
And I had a question about contract with other districts. There's a $21,000 variance under in the resources. It has Cook County terminated their agreement with us?
Crook and Jefferson both stopped joining us for ebooks,
Okay,
and they stopped that in May, at
okay,
the beginning of May.
All right.
So there's 2 months that we would have charged them for checkouts. Their customers no longer checked out from us
okay,
over that period, and that's why it was less than we anticipated.
okay.
Is
But
that-
they're still contracting with us for everything else.
They
Yes.
are.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we understood that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving from the general fund to the other funds that we track in this report. So the reserve fund, really minimal expenditures associated with some upgrades on the mobile library outreach vehicles. We installed some awnings for those vehicles. We put some wraps on the vehicles, and so those expenditures were fairly low based compared to what we had budgeted. Because if you'll recall, at the time we developed the budget for fiscal year 23-24, we did not know yet when those vehicles were going to arrive at the district, and so we didn't know whether the realized expenditure for those vehicles was going to land in fiscal year 22-23 or 23-24. It turned out all the vehicles arrived before June of 2023. So it all got realized in the reserve fund expenditures for the fiscal year 22-23 and didn't show up out of the budgeted amount here, which is why the expenditure is so low. Grant funds resourced at about 81%. And this is a case where the fund collection is so small, right? It's a collection of all of these smallish grants. And so a little bit of a deviation between, where we landed versus where we thought we would land can make a big difference. Really, the driving cost for this resource landing at around 81% and not at 100% was because when we developed the budget for that year, our starting balance, we assumed a higher starting balance than where we ended up when we actually finished out that fiscal year, which basically just translates into we ended up spending money off out of several of those grants in 22-23 that we didn't know whether we were going to spend those in May, June of 2023, or whether we were going to spend them in July, August of 2023. And so that does account for that variation there between the resourcing where we thought we would be versus where we ended up in the actuals. As far as expenditures, we had an expenditure rate percentage of about 47% relative to budget. And again, this one is a small set of funds with a variety of different anticipated expenditures. And so this one is fairly consistent with where we land most years. We often budget for kind of the maximal approach of application of grant funds, and then we land somewhere smaller than that. With capital projects, so that's Fund 400 and all of the bond-related construction projects, we were fully resourced. We had expenditures landing at about 77%, which that one again is tracking pretty well to where we anticipated it. We tried to build in a decent amount of margin in the expenditures for these budgets for capital projects, because while we have a really good estimation from Greg in his budget, we also recognize that there's lots of unanticipated things that can happen in a 15-month period between when a budget is approved and adopted versus the end of that fiscal year. And I will mention in this particular fiscal year, that expenditure of 77% included the purchase of the property at Stevens Ranch. So that is involved in here as well. Finally, we get to the debt service fund, and this one, it ended up as fully resourced as you could hope. We were 99% out of 100 where we thought we would land, and obviously fully expenditured. So we made both of our interest payments and our principal payment during this past fiscal year. I'll pause again before we get to investments. Any questions about those other funds? All right, as far as investments go, not a ton to report here. I guess the big message I have in both areas is really we're at a state right now where cash flow management is really guiding a lot of decisions. So there's a couple of things in play. For the capital projects portfolio, we're looking very closely at taking the money out of the US bank portfolio and moving it over to LGIP well ahead of anticipated expenditures. That said, we do have certain restrictions from the local government investment portfolio as far as their policies on maximum balance amounts that they will allow. And so right now we're at a state where we have all of these various investments coming to maturity on a monthly basis, and we have to be selective about which ones we move into LGIP and which ones we reinvest in short-term instruments so that we can keep them in US bank, but in a state where we could draw on it as needed. And the main reason, like I say, is to make sure that we're holding a healthy amount of cash in LGIP, but not so much that we're blowing through that cap that they have imposed on districts. And remember that this cap is across all of the districts holding through LGIP. So it's like not one cap for the capital projects and a different cap for our general operating expenses and a different cap for the debt servicing. It's all lumped together. And so it's this kind of balance here of making sure that we're carrying enough cash to cover expenses and to make sure that we have enough for anticipated or even the unanticipated, but balancing that against the needs in those other two LGIP funds as well. The other thing I wanted to mention about both of these investment portfolios, both the capital projects and the general and reserve funds portfolio, is that you can see in the detailed pages on the last two of this report that the majority of our holdings are in U.S. Treasuries or in the LGIP accounts. And so in terms of compliance with our district policy on investments, we remain in compliance and have not gone out of compliance at any point. So really just managing cash flow in both of those portfolios. For the general and reserve funds portfolio, we obviously anticipate our significant cash inflow from tax receipts in November, at which point we'll be looking at what's in the current year's budget in terms of what is earmarked for expenditures this year, and then what is the anticipated balance of unexpended funds in the current fiscal year. And that will guide a certain amount of how much we're willing to commit to this next round of reinvestments in that portfolio as well. Overall, I would say this first year of us experimenting with this general funds portfolio, It's been good. It has represented, as we hoped, a hedge against fluctuating interest rates. I would say that this particular year, the LGIP account did return overall. If we look at like the 12-month or even the 6-month averages, there was a better return for LGIP than the Pershing safekeeping account, not by a significant amount. And you can see in the report, like the current interest rate at the end of June was still at 5.2. They've actually raised it again. And so that will be a factor for this coming year as well, for us to make those decisions of how much do we keep in LGIP, where we know right now those returns are still better, and they tend to lag the overall bond market by a month or two. But again, we'll have to weigh that against maintaining and not going over our overall LGIP cap in terms of the total balance between the three accounts. Okay, so that was a lot on investment theory or philosophy. I did not talk much about the line items. I don't really care to do that unless you want me to talk about like what these numbers mean or what we're looking at here for the future.
No, I think that's a good explanation.
All right, last round for questions. Otherwise, I will let you move on to the next agenda item.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
All right, thank you, everybody. I'm gonna have to drop off now. Take care.
Okay. Next up, we have an educational presentation on the Library of Things, so welcome.
Yeah,
We're excited to.
so Lee Button is our collection development librarian, in charge of the Library of Things. And as I've said before, when a staff person does a really exciting presentation, I punish them by making them come to the board. So Lee did a great presentation to our staff, recent staff in service. And so I'm really excited for you to hear what he's got here. And were you able to get in or?
I am in the meeting. Let me see if I can share my screen.
Okay, yeah, it'll be. It looks like you are.
Yeah, I can, yeah, let's. Just a moment.
Got it?
Let's see.
Here.
I know.
This here. Okay, there we go. Hello, everybody. As mentioned, my name is Lee Button. I am one of the collection development librarians. I use the pronouns he, him, his, and they, them, theirs. And I'm here to talk to you all about my absolute favorite collection that the library has on offer. And that is our Library of Things. I'm going to be telling you all what the Library of Things is, why we have one, and then walking you through the past, present, and future of this collection. Then to wrap up, I'd be happy to answer any questions that y'all have about the collection or really anything. So, what is the Library of Things? The Library of Things is a collection of non-traditional library materials. That is to say, things other than books, periodicals, CDs, or DVDs. Many library systems have a Library of Things collection. Here, specifically at DPL, we've chosen to divide ours into 7 categories: arts and crafts, curriculum support, early learning, food and kitchen, music, outdoor life, and technology. We chose these categories because we hope them to be of particular alignment to the interest of folks here in Central Oregon. You know, we're an outdoorsy bunch. Who doesn't love food? Who doesn't love music? The arts and crafts scene here, you know, huge. So we specifically kind of customize these categories to what we hope people in our service population are going to respond to. Our vision for this collection is that someone can walk into their local DPL branch, see the Library of Things kit on the shelf, check it out, take it home and immediately start doing whatever activity is associated with that kid. We don't want the onus to be on them to seek out any additional resources or supplies. For that reason, we package items with instructional materials, usually in the form of books, accessories, and then consumables as appropriate. So for example, with the Instant Pot, we can't check out like, you know, raw food to cook in it because that would be disgusting. We can package it with like measuring cups, scoops, steamer baskets, and cookbooks to get people started. And in case you haven't had a chance to see the library of things, I did bring a kit with me. This is our Cricut. So this is roughly what the kits look like. So why do we have a library of things? Or phrased differently, how does the library of things align with the library's mission, vision, and values? There are two core values the Library of Things supports in particular, and those are accessibility and lifelong learning. The Library of Things supports the core value of accessibility by removing financial barriers to the pursuit of certain tasks. Picture someone who's always wanted to learn to play guitar, but they can't afford one, or maybe they're not sure if they want to make that big an investment. They can go to their library, check out a guitar, and a door that was previously closed to them is now open. The Library of Things supports the value of lifelong learning because people learn many different ways. Some people learn best by doing. The Library of Things is an experiential collection, and each kit represents a low barrier starting point from which people can then kind of begin a journey of exploring a topic or a subject that's of interest to them. Speaking of beginning a journey, you may be wondering how the Library of Things started at DPO. It began as a pilot program at our sister's branch in 2018. It actually started with 2 separate requests from staff to add a ukulele library. We do have ukuleles, we've got quite a bit more as well. During this initial phase, the single kind of biggest obstacle was discoverability. We kept these kits in staff spaces, and people had to go up to the desk and ask for them. That really didn't work, and that's kind of for 2 reasons. One, people didn't know what the Library of Things was. This was a totally foreign concept to them, and you weren't effectively communicating to them what, you know, what this was, what they could be getting. The other thing is that it's really hard to get people excited about a kit unless they can kind of see it for themselves. They want to pick up the bin, they want to review the contents list from the side. They want to decide whether it's worth it to drag a big heavy thing home with them. So for this reason, we have really prioritized making these kits as public facing and as customer facing as possible. And this is reflected in the design of the shelving units and renovated spaces. In Sisters Lehigh and Sun River, the Library of Things are all in freestanding kind of dedicated units that are very easy to discover. They're very eye-catching. And our hope is this really helps get people, you know, excited about what we have and kind of interested to learn more. After starting at Sisters, we expanded to Lehigh and Redmond. So by 2021, we had Library of Things collections at all 6 branches. At that point, we officially exited the pilot phase. The sort of single biggest recent change to this collection is it was originally conceptualized as being a collection for adults, but we thought, why not let everybody in on the fun? So we removed all borrowing restrictions based on age. So any DPO card holder of any age can check out any kit. We also added 2 categories that weren't initially part of the collection: curriculum support and early learning. Again, kind of focusing those directly at kids. There are now more than 170 kits in the collection. That number varies a little bit, but that's kind of roughly where we're sitting. We've come really far from very humble beginnings.
Is that 170 unique kits?
We have multiples of some, so like the ukuleles are very popular. We've got like 4 or 5 of those,
Okay.
so it's not 170 types of things, but it's 170 things in it. We look at percent checked out as kind of a metric for how successful a collection is. The collection as a whole usually sits at about 20% checked out. We consider that to be a pretty good average. But as you can see from this lovely chart, the Library of Things usually sits in the like 40 to 60% checked out range. So in terms of customer interest, we consider this to be one of the most successful collections. In terms of what people are actually checking out, I did list the 5 most popular kits by total checkouts. They are our ukuleles, our kilowatt meters, our Cricut Joys, like this guy right here, our bike repair kits, and our banjos. A question we get fairly often is how we select kits. How do we decide what to purchase? In addition to consulting the selection criteria outlined in the collection development policy, which we do whenever we decide to add anything to the collection, there's a couple of specific library of things considerations. These include cost. We do set a hard limit of $300 for the total replacement cost of any given kit, because we do charge borrowers that replacement cost if they completely fail to return a kit. And we don't want to create like a new financial burden for borrowers. So that $300 limit is really there as protection for the customer. We also have to think about like liability, like safety, especially considering the fact that any cardholder of any age can check out a kit. We don't want something super dangerous, people using these things unsupervised. So that's a consideration. We get requests for things like power tools. That would be super cool, maybe a little dangerous for what we're comfortable with. In terms of how we generate ideas for kits, we look at other libraries' collections. I spend like an unhealthy amount of time just browsing other libraries' catalogs, and if I see something cool, I get it for us. We take into consideration suggestions from staff and customers. When people check out a library of things kit, there's a little comment card inside that can indicate what went well, what didn't, and also share any ideas for additional like things we can get. But perhaps the single biggest surprise for me working with this collection is the role that has been played by community partnerships. People are really excited to buy stuff for the library. We are constantly being approached by organizations within the community asking if they can partner to create library of things kits. Not all of these partnerships have yielded kits, but here are the ones that have. There's an individual in our community who refurbishes old sewing machines. We circulate those. Pine Mountain Sports and Bend Bikes have helped us create a number of bike repair kits. Those are super popular. We did partner with the Environmental Center to create a reusable dishware kit. Unfortunately, that did check out once and never return. So not the most successful partnership, but we really appreciate the effort on their part. Abilene Folk Embroidery, which is based in Sisters, donated a bunch of supplies for cross-stitch embroidery kits. The High Desert Museum gave us a number of trail cameras that live at our Sisters and Pine Branches. The East Cascades Birding Alliance partnered with us to create birding backpacks. They got like binoculars, a kid set, adult set, there's one at each branch. And most recently, Deschutes County Solid Waste partnered with us to create a couple of kits, one of which is an electronic composter, which is a thing I didn't know. I never heard of that until this partnership arose. And I think that's why these partnerships are so cool. Not only do they strengthen the bond between the library and these organizations, but also they provide ideas that we would not have had on our own. And so that's a great way to kind of continue to expand the collection. Looking ahead to the future of this collection a little bit. Right now, the tech services team is hard at work purchasing kits for Redmond in preparation for the Hope branch reopening. For Sisters, Lapine, and Sun River, those branches all opened with completely new library of things collections. So we, took what they had there, brought it to downtown Bend and got them on this stuff. We won't be doing that for Redmond or probably for downtown Bend as well, because they already have a lot of stuff. But we are trying to make sure that the collections are significantly refreshed so that as customers are entering these new and renovated spaces, there's exciting stuff that they can, take a look at and hopefully take home. There's two categories that we are considering adding. The first is home and repair. We get requests for things like air purifiers or like simple hand tools. I think that would be super cool. It doesn't immediately fit into any of our existing categories. So this is something we're maybe looking into expanding perhaps later this fiscal year, but definitely something we are interested in. The other category we're considering is what we're calling sensory and assistive. We really want to be doing our best to support our like neurodiverse communities, our folks with physical and sensory differences, and our elderly population. And there's a lot of like assistive technology, as well as kind of things that will perhaps be used in an educational capacity, but we really want to make sure that we are doing this right. We want to make sure that the collection reflects best practices for serving these populations. So we're really taking our time. So this is probably not something that's going to happen in the immediate future, but it is definitely something we're interested in and think could be a really impactful part of this collection. The number one request we get from customers is that kits be holdable and that they float. Right now, kits are not holdable. They're first come, first serve, and they have to be checked out from and returned to the branch in which they live. So they're assigned a branch, that's where they have to be. And the reason for that is because we don't have a means of reliably getting kits from one branch to another. As much as I would love to, I can't just drive around the county all day, dropping off bins, and these kids can't go through a courier. So we don't really have a means of fulfilling holds in a way that would serve customers. We do know this is something people want, but we don't currently have the capacity to provide it.
Is there a reason why you can't transport them in the van?
So I think part of the reason is that they're a very irregular size. Like, you know, most of them don't fit in our courier crates, and I think that's a limitation for them, is what they can fit in with everything else they're carrying. That's my understanding, because this one, for example, is quite small. We've done some that are very large, some that are very long, so I think it's just the fact that they're irregularly sized and also some of them quite big. I think that's it.
Yeah, our courier drivers they're not equipped to handle strangers. They didn't
170
design their service that way,
Mhm.
so we couldn't, and it's a third party that we use, so,
We're working on
yes.
it. Stay tuned.
We spent a whole staffing service with everybody trying to come up with ways that we could do that, so.
Stay tuned.
So
Yeah.
say if you have birding kits at 2 branches, then do those, I mean, I know that you're not swapping them based on demand, but do they move around so that each branch gets a shot at those, or?
So what we've done historically is if interest in a kit is kind of like waned, we then relocate it. As long as stuff is still checking out, we don't wanna take it
Take it
from the
away.
kid that's enjoying it. At that point, we might buy a second one, like we did with the ukuleles, like
Right,
the one we have is super popular, so we did get more. I don't know if every branch has a ukulele, but almost every branch does. So in that case, that's what we would do. But if a kid is like, oh, this hasn't gone out in like 6 months and no one cares about it, that might be a good opportunity to maybe try it at a different location and see if it's more of interest to folks there. There's been talk, we've discussed doing some kind of like big, like annual or biannual swap of kits, but so far, because stuff stays popular at the branch where it lives, that hasn't been the direction we've gone. We could definitely reconsider that at some point, but for now, I think just moving individual kits is accomplishing what we needed to.
well, I can imagine you don't wanna take something away that people are excited about.
Exactly,
And they
yeah.
come in and they say, well, my neighbor just borrowed it, and where is it?
Yeah.
Is it possible to find out where kits are located?
Yes,
That available online?
yes, it
Yeah,
is.
that's, I was.
So
gonna
like
ask.
if I wanna stock the library that has the electronic compost, I know to go to,
So if you go to the
The
library website,
yeah.
if you click books, movies, music, there's a drop down, click on Beyond the Books. And that is a page where information about all of the kind of non-traditional collections live. You can also find out about like our hotspots there, there's something about maps or where to go. And there's a library of things link. If you click on that, that takes you to a bibliocommons search that pulls up all of the DPL library of things. You can then sort that by location, so you can see what is where. And you can also see real-time availability, which is super helpful, like if
Oh,
you're
that's
deciding
nice.
whether or not you know.
You wanna drive to Lapine and have
So I don't
it be
have to
gone.
go there,
Yeah, exactly.
And how long do people check these out for?
So these go out for 3 weeks at a time, the same as books.
Uh-huh.
We really thought that consistency would be helpful for customers rather than trying to keep track of different loan backs or different types of items.
And what's like the amount of time somebody has to spend going through what's been returned, restocking it, cleaning it? Have you had to hire a person to do that, or do you just add that activity on to the staff that are at the library?
So it's just something that any staff person does, mostly the PSSs at the various branches. We created for each kit, I don't know if you can necessarily see it, I kind of pass this around a check-in guide that shows pictures of each item in the kit. So people can really quickly cross-reference and say, is this there, is this there, is this there, is this there?
Right,
If something is returned and it's like obviously broken or missing a component, or there's something wrong with it's dirty, then they check in with myself and Cheryl, the other collection librarian who manages this collection, and we decide whether it's necessary to clean it or get replacement parts or whatever. So, you know, it does take some more management than like a book, for example, but we try to make it as simple as possible for everyone.
yeah, that's a great idea.
And how many replacements do you plan for per kit each year?
It really depends. So for example, with Cricut, we include vinyl, which is like, we consider that a consumable, and so like we expect folks to use that up. So we do account for that when we are deciding whether or not to add a Cricut. Some kits are pretty self-sustaining, there's the thing or there's not.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it doesn't work, unless the thing goes missing, we probably don't need to do anything with it. So it varies kit by kit, and that's one of the things about this collection that's really just like fun and weird and exciting, is every single thing in it is so different. I find myself having to do things all the time that I'm like, I never thought it would be my job to like restring a guitar. I just didn't think that was.
Yeah.
And I find myself doing that, or like having to like tune the sewing machine, like things I just did not ever anticipate having to do, I'm doing them all the time, and I think that's really cool, but it is just a fact of this collection.
So as far as the people who check these out, do you have like hardcore people that are in the know and know about these and check a bunch of different ones out? Or is it really across the board based on interest? And somebody's into cooking and they've heard you have the Instapot, so they come in just for that. So is it broad or is it pretty focused?
That's a great question.
Yes.
I feel like that's something that staff who are a little more public facing would have a lot more insight than I do. I know there are some kits that like are repeatedly checked out by the same person, or they're checking out like individuals like working their way through the whole collection.
Right.
I'm aware of those people, but I would actually also be really interested to hear kind of broadly, is it different people every time, or is it the same kind of
Yeah.
cohort of people? And I'm not really sure, so that's a great question, and
Yeah,
I wish I knew.
yeah, I just, it's,
But if like Betsy wanted the composting and it's in bin, there's no way she could say, oh, could you bring that to Redmond or? could-"
Unfortunately, no,
It has to
yeah,
go to-
it has to live at the branch that it got.
And does some, what if I can never check it out? Cause the same person is like, I gotta compost all the time. I'm just gonna keep checking it out. Do you ever run into those issues where another individual is like, oh, I really wanna get it, but this person keeps checking it out? Or no?
but do you have holds?
No hold.
So they're not whole.
They're not whole.
Yeah, it does have to go through, get processed by us and get back on the shelf, so.
There have been cases where we've gotten feedback like, oh, this thing is always checked out here, we can have another one. In that case, we've gotten like a second one, that's
Yeah.
usually helped.
Yeah, that's,
But I mean, I guess in theory, there could be two people always checking that thing out, so.
well, if you're not hearing about it, then it sounds like it's not a problem. So that's cool.
And as far, this is kind of a dual question for, well, maybe more than a dual question. As far as the real estate on the floor of the library that this takes up versus bookshelving. Obviously, it's gonna require more and different shelving, and it's gonna take up more room. So was that how did you decide on how much floor space to allocate it to it in the design of the new buildings?
It was a good question.
Yeah, that's a good question, and part of it, it's interesting, cause like you showed, almost 50% of the time they're checked out, so we don't need 100% of the space.
Right.
Really, I'm trying to remember, we talked about it forever and we designed furniture for it. Can't remember how we came up with the exact amount. And we adjusted.
Just like with all our collections, we tried to anticipate, you know, what we wanted to grow it to.
Yeah.
And then also, then taking in a factor of if they're 50% checked out. So like right now, we have about 288, so if they're 50% checked out, that's 140 for that's checked out. Let's say we grow it to 500, can we anticipate 250 are gonna be checked out? So maybe we build shelving for 250 of these kids. But it isn't, it isn't an exact science. Because as you see, the kit sizes, as we pointed out, they're all of varying sizes. You know, we've talked about getting inflatable paddle boards. You know, which, you know, how do you store that and what does that look like? So that's more what we were factoring in is the odds and ends, the different shapes. How can we have flexible shelving and drawers and different ways that people can access it and look at it and touch it and feel it and make it their own when they're in that building and yet still have these really viable and vibrant collections. So I think we did a pretty good job. I know that Lee was active in helping to create some of the ideas around the current library of things that we're using in Sistersville, Pine and Sun River. That will be rolling out at the Redmond branch as well, and it's been working really well. It's very flexible shelving, allows us to pull out shelves, so when we get the really big one in, we can move shelves around and kind of resort it. Stevens Ranch in downtown Bend will be a little bit different. We have some built-in shelving that I think is gonna be really great to use. It'll be a great place to showcase and to, again, try and accommodate the different sizes that who knows what anybody's gonna want 5 years from now, but we're trying to build that flexibility in without ignoring the fact that books are our bread and butter. Right, so it is a balancing act, but I think with the help of a lot of the consultants, Lee was great in really kind of describing what kind of things they're looking at in the future and how to kind of forecast what we're gonna get, that I think you'll be.
Betsy, the composter is available right now. Why?
I've been looking at that thing online, so I was trying.
Yes, before 8 o'clock.
And then also I would think that as we develop more maker spaces within the library and we're having programming on those, that will also
Yep.
might have some bleed over into
Yeah,
this as well.
I see a lot of opportunities to have those kind of two initiatives support each other.
Right.
To get people like, interested in specific skills or to develop those skills and then be able to practice them at home with Library of Things kids. So I think that'll be a great opportunity.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Okay.
Any more questions for Lee?
Very nice job.
Yeah, no, this is fascinating. I need to go online and, I mean, I know some of the things that are there, but I don't know all the things, so.
I know in Sisters, they're kind of out in the middle.
Mhm.
And when you go by, you look at it, and what are all those boxes there for? So I think it helps to get people engaged and to figure out, yeah, we do have this. Otherwise, they don't seem to know.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people, how many times I hear people say like, I didn't know the library had ukuleles, I didn't know the library had sewing machines, like
Right.
people are still discovering it, and so. Yeah, hopefully the way that we are staging in the building will help introduce them to new people.
Yeah, that's a real opportunity.
What's the best route to suggest a new kit?
Well, you can reach out to me. If you're welcome to use a comment card, but those just get routed to me as well. So.
My
Yeah.
spouse wants a stroop waffle maker and I don't have cabinet space for that, so this would be fantastic.
Yeah, honestly, that would be great.
And we have a suggestion for purchase button on our catalog that people can fill out.
Okay, all right. Any more questions?
What's cricket?
Okay, a Cricut is a little machine. It's like a die cut machine, it's got a little blade in it. You feed like vinyl through it, or you can feed other materials, and you connect it to an app on your phone, and you design a shape on the app, and it cuts out the shape on the vinyl. So you can use it to like create decorations, or people use to make cards, stuff like that, and it's very compact, as you can see, so. Yeah, these are among the popular things as you saw, so.
Okay,
It's for the crafty person.
yes,
Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you.
yeah, thank you. That was great. And now we're into Greg's report, bond updates.
So good evening, everyone. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So I would say from the report, it's kind of a slow month, not a lot of stuff in there. Like last month, we had all that budget to talk about. But schedules are all really moving along fine. No big concerns or surprises or anything. On any of them, really no changes. In the table, I did make a change and put the actual date at Sun River OP. And it did make me think about the Redmond, that got it in there, it's December 6th. It's really a placeholder because DPL ultimately picks what day they're ready to open when it gets down. Mention that, it's, I show a week in my schedule and it gets adjusted as needed. So little flexibility, but schedule wise, like I said, everything there is running really pretty smooth for me, much the same as we've been planning. On the budget, there were no budget adjustments or changes to the budget from the one that you're just saying, you know, we've spent a number of months planning for that, and usually it only occurs about, on average, about twice a year, I've been doing major budget adjustments, so there's nothing there, the contingencies all remain the same as the prior month. So, no changes overall in the budget. The, procurements and contracts and that, just minor stuff as we go through an authorization and we approve a change order or amendment to a contract. It's small stuff like that. And those go through on a regular basis as we have authorization in place and we may be processing some of them. And, those are going through, but no big significant cost, you know, contracts or change orders or anything that have happened this past month, so that's fairly quiet. Insurance is there, it's doing its thing, and everybody's getting enrolled and keeping up, and so it's always good that there's no issues to talk about on the insurance end of it. And from the design and construction, you know, with Central, we got our final permit, got that all paid. The Miller Hall team issued what they call the conformed set of plans. It's the final set of plans, make sure it picks up all the last plan check comments and anything like that. And so it's all about building right now and really moving forward from that standpoint. Kirby's going through and doing some final pricing and bidding, and a lot of it has been anticipated in the budgets and in the GMP we set with them. So things that we knew were gonna change on the plans, they've at least put allowances and budgets to do those. And that way that ultimately we wanna see that we capture those costs within the GMP. And, you know, in Redmond, we've been going along all the way through that project and very successfully capturing those costs. You know, we have internal costs within the GMP to pay subs for stuff, but we've got budgets built in there, so it's really made it very confident in the numbers they give us. And when we start those GMPs, when we get to the end, you know, they're actually, again, keep maximum price, so they've been, that's been a good positive relationship with both of our contractors on the GMPs. So those are all working really well. The, you know, activity on Central, we are updating some shelving things, and we're learning some things on Redmond. We always talk about the lessons learned, and we learn from our small branches, but as we're getting into Redmond, it's a bigger building, more shelving, different shapes and sizes, and dealing with the access floor on the second floor and some of those things, and figuring out, well, maybe this would work a little bit better if we made adjustments here and there to really make sure that the flow works well so people can move through and about the shelving, that it works well for staff of how are they gonna put the books on the shelves and how the collection is divided up. And there's probably a lot more to it than what I just said that Lynn would tell you, but her and Chris deal with that, and as long as they take care of it, I don't care. I just say, oh, I'm gonna spend a little money. But that's okay, because I think we end up with one of the most valuable tools, right, is display, much like the library of things, the whole collection. And so at Stevens Ranch at Central, we're really looking back at, okay, what was our last design on the shelving and how can we improve it? And how can it work better for both the customer and for staff and its use? Because we haven't built any of it, we haven't even, you know, we got to a price with our supplier on it, but these are small changes. But I think before they go off and start doing shop drawings, buying anything, and even ultimately placing the orders for the manufacturers, we're getting all of this figured out. And ideally, it will reduce the amount of need to make changes in the future. And when you think about Central, it's like, we're walking through the building today. It's a really big building. It has a whole lot of stuff in it, and so. You know, to make a change that may have a ripple effect, it's like, we want to change this thing, well, you have 100 of those, so we're gonna change it 100 times.
Right.
Changing it now while it's on paper before anything's made. Super, super cost effective, so it's something I think the team is doing a good job at really looking at. Our furniture is coming along, we see presentations of colors and fabrics and chairs that. Everybody gets to sit on and test. And figure out which
There's one back there if you wanna sit on it.
Another test.
Oh, there we go.
But that's moving along. That will probably go through the end of the year as we really finalize that. And, you know, we're kind of waiting on some things to see all of the furniture arrive at Redmond, because we have new pieces there that weren't in the other branches that are gonna be at Central potentially. And sometimes when you see it and you touch it and you feel it and you see, we like it all, but can we change this part? Or,
Right.
and whether it's a top or how something is made, so there's been some real benefits of the staggered of our openings. That Central's gonna gain and downtown Bend is gonna gain as two of our biggest projects coming. The learning curve coming out of Redmond we're seeing it already, so. To me, that's very positive that we're getting that value for it and changing that. Our early learning, they're working on prototyping and working through some of the technical design. We talked about that last month on some cost parts of it, but figure plant or manufacturer is working away on that. That'll continue for the next year, figuring out all of our play toys, so. But overall, everything on Central seems to be moving along very well. Our, field operation with Kirby is moving really good from a schedule standpoint, from a procurement standpoint, getting materials and everything. We had our OAC meeting with them today, and I'd ask them, do they have everything they need to build a structure? That's what they're doing.
Mhm.
And there wasn't one thing that they didn't have their finger on. Whether it's all of the wood framing and the ALDT and the concrete, the steel work, all of it is just flowing into the job. Every week they get deliveries of stuff and it goes up. And so it's a really good feeling that they've got a good handle on product. And 2-3 years ago, 4 years ago, material deliveries was one of the largest problems in the industry for us in construction, because of the pandemic and all of the supply chain issues that came out of that. And we're really in a much better position at the moment. We're getting materials earlier. Some of our mechanical system components that won't be installed until after the new year are already stored on site because they've ordered them. We've encouraged them to order early, get it here so that we don't run into a problem down the line. So, I think that project is just moving right along really well. Redmond is, Kirby's in the final throes of punch list and detailing out stuff and commissioning and getting those things done. The site work is moving along. We held off on planting plants, and our landscape architect was out this week looking at all the plants, and we're gonna go now is just to do with the heat and the time of the year. And so
Right.
that was good. We're starting to see all of our signage and some of those things. The shelving is moving right along. Our early learning is gonna be showing up in another week. And collection shows up this month, so, the things that we've been working towards are all moving forward. And so far, there's nothing that's really surprising or concerning over there schedule wise to be ready to open in December as we planned, so that's worked really well. I think on the branches, there's just some cleanup of some change order work and some of the stuff. We held off on some stuff on Sisters and Lapine. They've started putting in the new HVAC controls. we kind of pushed it out so that we weren't overwhelming staff and trying to be in every library all the time and, do it a little bit more synchronized and planned out. So some small stuff happening there, as we go through and wrap up, Sun River. Downtown Bend, it's really all about design right now. We're in construction documents already, and so we went through our design development phase and completed that, reviewed those plans and got feedback and looked at it was, from a cost standpoint, we evaluated a number of options and stuff. So we looked at where is the cost of the building and the design, how are we doing on budget? And as we work through, we always like to have alternates and options. Can we do this? Can we do that? Sometimes we've been in the past, we need to cut because we've gone way over budget. We got to bring it back in budget. Sometimes we're looking at, okay, we have funding available. Is there something that we might want to do? And that was really evident in downtown Bend. It's a big building and we really, in the start, it was like, okay, how much of the building systems do we want to affect? And building systems being like the electrical, mechanical, plumbing, the lighting, all that, but also the exterior skin. So the roofing systems, all of the roofing systems and the window systems. There were areas that were talked about, but not fully defined early on in the bond. Other than we're gonna upgrade them. And we did this with the branches, the smaller ones, that as we dug into them, one, we were learning, hey, the buildings are older. By the time we renovate them, like this downtown Bend is gonna be over 25 years. So the life of some of those systems, some of them might have 5 years or 10 years. But when you're building for 25 to 50 years, it's like, okay, we need to fix this now because trying to fix it later is much more expensive, much more difficult. And not when you're looking at how do you use those bond dollars. So this period of time was when we wanted to make that change and really go through and say, okay, what's all on our list of what we would like to do? How does that fit in our budget? And also to give to Miller Hall the final direction of, okay, you're ready to prepare the construction documents. We want this, 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 and this. And so that was a process that we went through this past month, on top of Sun River and Redmond opening, and it is a thing that, for the staff, it adds on a lot of decision-making, thinking, and evaluation of options, so. But we went through that, finalized that, and released Miller Hall on proceeding with all of that, so that's well underway. We get our 50% construction documents this month, and we'll get to 100% construction documents, probably out in November timeframe. And so, which we know what we're gonna do and what it's gonna cost us. And the biggest thing we have to plan for is, okay, we're gonna build it in a year. What kind of escalation factor? And that's something that Kirby works with us to really build into their cost model of, hey, here's what we think we should carry for continued inflation and escalation over the coming year. And so that there's not a big surprise ideally. Now I set our contingency levels, the owner's contingency level, that's one where I had it at a much higher percentage. Still, because there's always unknowns. We don't know when a big thing like a pandemic would hit or some other major supply chain impact or something that would drive costs up. And so that's where I will tend to set the owner's contingency a little bit higher. And that's a number that generally we don't share with everybody. They know they have to work within a budget, but we have protections below. So that is moving right along. It's really kind of everything, what's going on out there. Hopefully, kind of quick summary of the report of highlights, questions on anything.
If I could put a mark there.
I just had a question about how the cost estimates came in on downtown, when you're talking about updated cost estimates, options and alternative designs, and you explained that well, but what kinds of things, I mean, did costs come in about what we thought they would? And then when you're talking about options and alternative designs, how big of things are we, I mean, what kinds of things aren't getting done?
Yeah,
Or what kinds of extra things are we able to do, just?
yeah. So, the previous budget, this is going back to the budget we had set back in February.
Right,
We had it at about 13 million or a little more for construction costs
right,
for downtown Denton. And it was based on a cost estimate that Kirby had put together and some really early high level plans.
right,
So that we knew, and we had originally set that budget 2 or 3 years ago based on the early concepts
right,
that we had our cost estimator, a couple people give us pricing. So that kind of set the original baseline. As we've gone through the process and we were looking at, okay, some of our projects are doing well, we're saving money, and one of the things we, I think, talked about throughout the life of this bond program was we didn't want to run out of money and not have anything to do for downtown Bend being our flagship
right,
library. And so as I would see potential savings coming out of projects and stuff, I would say, okay, well, let's put it over here in downtown Bend. So in the last budget adjustment, I adjusted our budget up for construction costs up to a little over 16 million. So
Okay.
it went up about 3 million.
Mhm.
And that was in that last, and the number was based on, as we went through the design process and we started talking about what are we doing in the building? It's easy to see all of the interior renovations and changing the rooms and the spaces and all the finishes. But we really started diving into those systems and looking at what are they. And part of this was thinking back about the branches and how we sometimes went like, oh, we can reuse this old stuff.
right,
And then we got into it and said, no, we really can't. Now let's change it, and that's why we're going back into Sisters in La Pine, making some changes to some control systems that we thought would be a good idea to save the old ones. So on downtown Bend, we really looked at every one of those. So things that are changing now that we weren't going to change before, on the electrical system. So the main switch gear. So this is a really big piece of electrical equipment. I don't know if you know what it is, but it's when the power comes in from the utility company, it goes into a large electronic board, switchboard. And that board then distributes power out to all of the typical electrical panel that you would see with breakers and stuff, and out to equipment. That's a piece of equipment that we said, okay, we want to change that and take that out and put in a brand new one. Bring it up to modern technology, often it's more efficient and functional. One of the things we learned about this switchboard here is that they quit making it, and the manufacturer is actually told us they're gonna stop making replacement parts. So if something breaks, you gotta go find an old used one that's been rebuilt and buy parts off of it.
yeah, good.
So we found that, that's one of those things that you learn that as technology rapidly improves, it makes the things that we used, in this case, 25 years ago, starting to become obsolete. The mechanical system, so HVAC system, we are replacing almost all of the equipment. One of the big pieces that we originally said, we could probably save that, which is a chiller unit, and it resides up on top of the roof. It's a big piece of equipment. And that was one that we looked at it and again, questioned the engineer and said, is it going to last another 25 years plus? They said, well, probably not, but you can change it later. I said, well, no, the money is today
Right.
and not later. And so that was a big piece that we said, we want to do that. And we looked at a lot of mechanical equipment, and Robert was looking at a small piece of equipment that was not working right now, and is one that we were gonna save. And it's a inline piece, and you can imagine the mechanical duct working in there, there's a piece of equipment that distributes air. Robert saying, well, should I change it? And it's like, well, maybe we should be changing all of them because they're gonna wear out and they're above the ceiling. Means you gotta tear into the ceiling, tear it out. Well, we're taking out all the ceilings. So it's all sitting easily for us to replace them. So that was another one. We said, okay, we're gonna move forward with that change. So that was kind of a big consideration of all these components and of the mechanical system. We had planned a lot of big changes to the main mechanical equipment, the boilers and all of those, but even like the water heaters, simple, regular water heaters. At one point, it was like, well, they're running, they're working, we'll leave them alone. But again, they're at the end of their life, so we added those in. We went through a lot on the exterior skin and really looked at it, and things as simple as looking at the caulking on there. Caulking wears out, and if you ever look at old caulking, it's cracked, it's opened, it splits and leaks water inside your building, and so therefore it really damages. And so we're, re-caulking the building, we're cleaning up, resealing it. The masonry is actually in really good condition. So we're not having to do anything other than joints and sealing and those things. The windows, the clear story windows, the top ones, they've had leaks, they've had problems with the glass where it just has failed, and the gas, et cetera, on the inside of them. And at first we were gonna replace the glass. And after further reviewing it and looking at it, we said, no, we're gonna replace the whole window frame. So that way, one, we can get back into where the flashings are and how it comes in. And when you look at the upper soffit, you can actually see water stains up in there and some of that. And so we're looking at replacing and repairing those.
Okay.
Probably the biggest thing on the outside is the roof. And we really looked at all of them. There's like 3 different types of roofing systems up there, and looked at where they at in their life. And originally we were trying to just, okay, we'll just leave that, and we're doing the interior. But we really decided, that's an area that we need to fix now and set it up again for that long-term life. As we looked at fall protection up there. What's there? There's fall protection up there, but Kirby went up there and said, well, we wouldn't let our guys use that because it's so old.
Yeah.
And they realized that what they were designing on back then really wasn't resisting the amount of force that's put onto it. And so we're upgrading those things. So that's where the alternatives, because of our main budget, and when I moved the budget from the 13 to the 16, that 3 million was really centered around these kinds of upgrades, and there's some more of those. But to really look at what we were doing with the building, we were really able to maintain the budget on all of our interior renovation and repositioning that, which when that was good and sound, and we really felt like, hey, we've got the right money to do everything that we wanted to do. That let us really then say, okay, how can we improve the building for its life? And that's where we push that money to. There was some alternates, there was a couple, some things that we looked at and talked about, well, should we do something with this? The 2 end walls, the big glass walls. We're gonna investigate one area that's had a leak problem, but we believe it's up associated with the roofing. And part of the roofing is all the sheet metal work that goes around it. We're gonna replace a lot of that where it's cracked and moved over time. And I believe that's gonna help address that. But we realized we don't need to tear out the entire curtain wall. It's in really good condition, much like the brick. So those were ones where we said, no, we don't need to go spend money on that. We believe that it's really sound as it is.
Yeah, no, that's a great,
Is
yeah,
that what-
that's helpful, yeah, yeah.
And it's fresh in my mind because we spent this past month going through
Going over
this
all of it, yeah.
and really debating what should we be spending the money on and what gives the most value to the district and the life of the building. So it was really how the team looked at it. And we had a good group, you know, Kirby spent a ton of time in there with their people researching it, Miller Hall and Steel Architects, them, as well as their consultants. We had all their consultants out looking at stuff to really help us give good advice to the district of, here's what we think this component's gonna do for you in the long term.
Okay, thank you. And then you have, a change on the early learning installation for Sisters in the Pine.
Yeah, this was one part, and this was where, when we, did the prior board authorization level, which was at 545,000. We set that actually a really long time ago. I don't recall exactly when, but it's probably almost a year ago that we set that, and we've never, it was just recently that we actually like bumped into it. And, so I requested up to 575. I don't think we're gonna get there, but one of the things that we learned is one of the carts, we wanted to change it. And this is an early learning cart that the kids play with, right? And make some of those changes. And so they occur because we're figuring out what's working and what's not. And so this pushed it over slightly. You know, actual cart modifications, I think was like around $4,000, yeah, for the 700. And I think I'm probably only 1,000 or 2,000 over the prior authorization level. But it was one that one wanted to bring it back to you guys and make sure that we had proper authorization, and then also authorize a slightly bit more in case we come up with things that we need to say, your plan here, change this one.
And this is just for Sisters and Lapine?
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have already paid early learning, forgotten the name of it.
Figure plan
Figure, right.
is our manufacturer. So this is something where they built a cart for us.
Mhm.
And then we said, well, can you make it do this and this, and can we fix
So
this?
it could change.
One of the things is, you know, the early learning got introduced to the community, to the children. They figured out how to play with it, and they really figured out how to break it. And how to get things stuck where nobody thought it could get stuck.
Yeah.
And I think the other is their custom units, and we've had this discussion about when we put them out on Sisters in the Pine, they were untested really. And so we learned a lot of what was happening in there with those and how they were being utilized and what was working in the supervisors. Kathy and Zoe and the staff, they're figuring out, you know, they would call Figure Plant directly, okay, it's done this, what do I have to do? And then, you know, through that process, we've learned, hey, there's some things that we should change on these units. Some of the units that are being built like Redmond and even Sun River were captured those changes, you know, and this is some just going back. But it's ones that we bought and paid for. When there's times where things break because of poor workmanship, or it's a warranty issue, wasn't broken by a kid, it just, or some things that It's like, look, the kid should not have been able to break that. They fix those on their dollar. And then when we say, hey, we want an upgrade, then that's when they say, you know, and we evaluate that. Is it a warranty issue and is it their responsibility, or is it a change in the design or something that, you know, really they couldn't anticipate, so.
Okay, good. They're a good company to work with. And
They are, they've been good, you know. All of them, you've worked through and figure out how to work best with them and what you like and what you don't like. We've had good partnering sessions with them to figure that out, because sometimes you have to, you know, tell them what you don't like. I wouldn't say everything's always perfect, right? Because that's true of all our vendors. They can upset us at times. And they do well. There's nobody, I think, that we're ready to say we never want to work with them again, but yeah,
Some are just easier than others.
yes.
Well, I would entertain a motion, if anyone would like to make one.
I'll move to provide the library director signing authority up to $575,000 for the Sisters and the Pine Library's early learning, fabrication, and installation costs.
Is there a second?
I second
Okay, any further discussion or questions? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Greg.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, Todd. Library news.
Okay, I will say in the first 20 years of working at the library, we rarely canceled anything. Then COVID hit and we started canceling things. So all that to say is because of the evacuation orders for the Sun River community, we have decided that it's in the best interest of the community to cancel the grand opening ceremony on Saturday for the Sun River.
Oh, that's. I hadn't
Yeah.
thought of that.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. We were very excited to do it. We had everything lined up. But we really feel it would be insensitive of us to be celebrating something in the middle of a big stress time for a lot of people.
Right.
So just made that decision today. I sent you out some information and we've got that posted. It's out on our Facebook page already. There we go. So stay tuned. We'll be looking for a new date in the future. Something I'm really excited about coming up on September 21st. It's called Festival of Voices, and maybe Chantal, you can tell us a little bit about it. It's a really exciting partnership that our staff have come up with. So.
Yeah, so once upon a time, like 10 years ago, there was the Festival of Colors, and it was done in Redmond a couple times, moved to Madras, and then it kind of went away for a while, probably because of COVID. And Liz Goodrich, our events supervisor, has been working really hard with members of the community from all different backgrounds, all different voices, to bring everyone together to pull together what we're now calling the Festival of Voices. That includes having booths for all these different representatives of, let's say, the LGBTQ community, to the African American community in Central Oregon, to the Latino community. But even adding in people that it may not just be about ethnicity, that it's also about, like I said, the LGBTQ and other types of backgrounds and just voices that are often not heard. So that's why we changed it to voices instead of to colors. And it has been just a tremendous outpouring from the community. We have so much interest. I think we have right now 18 different organizations participating. And then we will be doing also a ceremony for immigration of people becoming citizens. Yeah.
Oh, correct.
And we'll be singing the Star Spangled Banner, and
Wow.
we have the mayor of Redmond speaking, as well as a representative. We're not totally sure just yet who it is, but someone at the state level from the governor's office will also be in attendance for this. So we're really excited. We're eager to see how this lands for our communities and we intend to watch it grow in the future.
And this will be in Redmond, Lake.
It's in Redmond and it's on Saturday, September 21st.
From 11 to 5.
Thank you.
It's Centennial Park.
Okay.
So right across from the library. Library.
Nice.
Also, Banned Books Week is the 22nd through the 28th. Our staff has some nifty new Banned Books Week shirts. Actually, we're all wearing tomorrow for in-service to take some fun pictures. And last update, based on our last work session, we've identified other work sessions we want to have. To help out Lori in scheduling, it'd be really helpful to know dates that are not available basically through the end of the year. And that'll help us try to plan out when we might be able to do some work sessions. So, and she'll send out a reminder, but please, if you have those, send them to her.
Yeah, we're working on getting, a consultant to come in and to work with us, and we just we don't wanna lose momentum from the work that we did earlier, and, so the sooner we can know when we're available, we can get a consultant lined up to help us with that work.
And the Festival of Voices, the times on the 20th.
11 o'clock to 5 o'clock.
Okay.
And it'll be food, entertainment, storytelling, lots of fun.
Okay. Do we have, foundation news?
Chantal is gonna give it today because I was not in attendance at the last foundation meeting.
What's new, Chantal?
So the foundation, we had our investment manager representative attend the last foundation board meeting. And we invest the foundation funds, specifically the capital campaign funds, through ASI. So they're a local investment wealth management group here. And so a gentleman came and he showed us our portfolio and how he intends for it to grow. Some of it slow, some of it faster, depending on how soon we'll need to pull out that money. And so it was really good because the foundation board doesn't usually get to that granular level, but it was really interesting. They were able to ask some questions and everyone feels comfortable, I think, with the plan that we have. So that occurred, and we can get an extra copy for you, Betsy. I'd love for you to see that.
Yes, thank you.
Let's see what else. The capital campaign is just making steady progress. We haven't landed any $1 million gifts of late, but we're working on it. So we did have a fundraising event planned. It was back at the end of August, and we had to cancel it in part from the fires that were occurring out by Ranch out east. And also that the man who owns ASI Wealth Management was hosting it for us. And he was just in the middle of a lot of things personally that he couldn't do. So we're rescheduling it for either November or December. And if all of you would like to attend, I think it would be a really fun event. You'll get to meet some of our donors. And then we will have John Brade, the artist for Redmond and Stevens Ranch, will be doing the presentation. And then we'll also be doing presentations on the early learning and possibly the lead, and then talk about the foundation's plans to build an endowment. And that endowment's purpose is we're doing all this great work and building 6 new libraries, et cetera, and we want it to be sustainable for the future. And so we're looking more seriously at establishing an endowment so that it can help sustain us for the future. So that'll be coming. We don't have a date yet. And then author I think all of you have heard by now that Bend High Auditorium was torn down. That is where we hold all of our events. So this next year, we'll be looking at a much smaller venue, usually 600 seats, and it'll be at like Summit High or one of the area high schools. And so with that in mind, we're just rethinking about how we do author for this year and next year, because we don't want to lose money, and we'll lose money if we try to bring in really high brow authors that we won't be able to make the money back on the ticket sales with less people buying tickets. So one idea I brought to the foundation board is just to have poets. So we have our poet laureate, Ellen Waterston, actually lives in Bend. And so we're looking at inviting her to be a speaker. And then the previous poet, a really wonderful man, Anis Mojani, was poet laureate for 4 years, and have him come. He's really fun, spoken word and poetry, and he's an artist. And then maybe, and then one other person I have in mind, but so that, you know, we may not have the number of people showing up, so we can pay them hopefully a lot less for their appearance, and then we can break even or make some money. That's the end game. That was it. Can you remember?
No.
Anything else?
That's not it.
Okay. That's a lot, though.
Yeah.
I have to say, I forgot my biggest announcement. Greg and I were just out standing on the second floor deck of the new central library.
Oh, my gosh.
Where I saw the peaks of a couple of mountains from
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So just want you to know that third floor is gonna have the best views.
So the smoke cleared enough.
Yes.
I know, it's like the clouds parted today.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, we'll look forward to more dates for all of these events, and I think, yeah, I think, keeping people safe and being aware of what's going on in the community is essential, because they need people who serve, so. Critical communication, I didn't.
Our biggest one is just the Sun River cancellation, and that is out and posted.
Right.
So.
Okay, self-review of the meeting. Bunny, do you want to start?
Sure. I thought it was a really good meeting, and I loved the presentation on the things.
The library of things.
Yeah, library of things, I like that. And I really appreciate that you had the foresight to move money to downtown Bend, and then to go through that building looking for the portions that are too old to try and save. Sometimes you try and save a few dollars and it ends up costing so much more. I understand that. So I really appreciate that. That portion of it. Thanks.
Okay, Betsy?
I just wanted to recognize and appreciate Lee including in his presentation the connection between the program and the library's values. I love that. And just, appreciate him taking the time to map those things together.
Right.
And to tell me about the
Oh,
Yeah, so let me know.
composter.
Yeah, that is very cool.
I know. All right, Erin?
I appreciated Robert's presentation on the budget, just the clear and accessible data that was there. I loved Lee's quote on the kids being a low barrier starting point to begin a journey.
Yeah.
And 170 kids, that's incredible. Yeah, those are my.
Okay, well, I agree with what everyone has said. I too really, I appreciate, as always, Robert's clarity on the financials. I really feel like he explains things well and explains the reasons behind the changes, and I like the switch to the the summary pages that kind of make sense of all the numbers, because, you know, it's not the numbers, it's the reason that the numbers change that is usually the most interest, so I like that, and then I too appreciate the thoroughness that you're going through and really examining our buildings so that they are good for the next 25 to 50 years. We made a big ask of the community, and I really want to deliver something that is gonna last for decades, and it's hard to believe these buildings are 25 years old. I mean, it doesn't seem like they're that old, but they are, and as someone who has a house that is of that era, I know things are wearing out, so it's good to get them fixed now while the ceilings are ripped up, and I think it will make for a good future for our buildings, so, thank you.
I just want to highlight our hidden partner in all of this. Lori Carmichael sets up all of the rooms. She also made cookies for you, got everything set up, and she goes through and watches the entire video of this meeting to do the minutes. So thank you, Lori. And just wanted to highlight that. She does so much behind the scenes for us. And I know since we shift to evenings, it's hard for us to be here, for her to be here. So this is, I just wanted, you know, she's always with us, so.
There you go.
She saves us so many times, at least for me, I'm talking, I forgot that or whatever, and I so appreciate her.
Yeah. No, she takes good care of us and really keeps us on the up and up. So, yeah, so we need to do our part and get our availability dates to her, make her life easier. Okay, I think that's it. With that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody. Great.
And thanks to Margo for getting the charts.
Yeah.